My name is Jakub Nabrdalik, and I'm the head of software development in Poland for Finance. And we don't have much time to talk about me, and I'm not that really interesting, so let's move on. What is extreme programming? Do we have anybody here who actually does extreme programming? Hands up? No? I didn't expect anyone. So, first of all, a few trivial things. Picture this. This is early 2014, and this is Skills Matter HQ in London, and I'm on a training of a Scrum Master training, right? And the lady who is actually doing the Scrum Master thing, and she teaches us about Scrum, actually says something like this. Do you guys do extreme programming? No? Then go back home and learn extreme programming, because Scrum is not going to help you if you're not doing extreme programming. Is it interesting? How about this? There is a book written against extreme programming and published. Interesting? All right. How about this? Nobody does extreme programming these days. I have not met a single person who do extreme programming in Poland. I have heard about people who did that years ago somewhere else, but nobody does the full extreme programming anymore. And nobody hears about extreme programming anymore. There were a few conferences a few years back, but basically the term is dead. And yet, this is the most important thing for software development ever. All right? Are you confused already? I hope so. Let's go back to the history, because even the history about extreme programming is pretty much interesting. It was 1993, I think, when the guys in Chrysler decided that they have to replace their old COBOL systems. And if you know COBOL, you know that it's good to replace COBOL systems. These were the payroll systems, all right? And in 1995, they started to actually use Smalltalk, and they started a project to actually do that. After a year, the project was a completely failure. Nothing happened, right? It wasn't anything like production ready. So they hired Ken Beck and lots of other guys, and they restarted the project in 1996. And now, after a year, it was finally delivered, all right? The project in 95 was completely wrong for all the possible reasons. Basically, everything was wrong. And the project in 1996 was actually fine. And why was that? Well, actually, Kent mixed together all the best practices he could think of. He tried them all, he pushed them there, and they kind of worked out all the best practices working together and how to deliver to actually be able to do what the previous team was not able to, right? So there was a big success. And there were a lot of smart people who write a lot of smart books, so that got very well promoted, all right? And we learned a lot of that from that. However, the project itself was killed after 3 years, and the business went back to COBOL payroll systems. Great success, right? So why is it important? What's the benefit of all of this if it was rolled back, right? Because it doesn't look like much now. Now the thing is that there is a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge learned during this 1 year project, or actually 3 or 4 years project, depending how you look at it. But there was a lot of things that we as IT actually have learned about software development, and this knowledge is persisted. So what is extreme programming? Well, there are values, there are principles, and most of all, there are practices, okay? And the most interesting part about it is that none of the ideas in extreme programming are new. Nothing was invented for extreme programming. Actually, everything that was there was created long, long ago, okay? Are you confused? Why do we call it extreme programming? Why is it important then, when everything else was present before? Well, the interesting part is that extreme programming takes the common practices and pushes them to the extreme level. Now, what do you mean about that? Let's talk about something simple, like code reviews. Who knows what a code review is? Oh, come on, everybody knows code reviews, right? All right. So, how can we be extreme? Code reviews are basically good. They help you find bugs before they hit production. They help you get the code to be better, right? So what can we do to be extreme in code reviews? How about doing the code reviews while the code is written? Not later, just in the same moment. So extreme programming introduced pair programming all the time, because pair programming is like code review. You have another set of eyes and another mind that can actually verify all your code as you are writing it. Okay? How about testing? Now, testing today is just a normal thing. Everybody does test-driven development, right? But back then, that wasn't so. And actually, test-driven development, behavior-driven development, all those things, acceptance test-driven development, right? These were all put together in this extreme programming project. And even the customer, you can test it with the customer. The idea the customer will write test scenarios and manage those test scenarios. It's there. All right? And it's a bit extreme when you take all of this together. How about the design? The design can be extreme if everybody does refactoring all the time. Who does the real work then, right? Isn't it a little bit too extreme? Nobody does features anymore, we just do refactoring. How about simplicity? The simplicity, well, we could go with the extreme version of that if we would say that we are going to always choose the simplest possible solution to a problem, and then we will leave it as it is. We will never prepare for anything else, and we'll never make it more complex than it needs to be, okay? How about architecture? Now you got those guys in ivory tower architects, right? The very, very smart guys with PhDs and so on. And now let's say that everybody's going to do the architecture all the time. And we are not going to have any kind of ivory towers anymore, and we're not going to even hire those smart architecture guys. How about integration? Now, integration today is another thing like test-driven development, like it's completely natural, right? But back then, the idea that you can continually test and integrate all the code was kind of a pretty extreme. How about iterations? Everybody knows iterations. If you want to use Scrum, you're going to have iterations. Kanban, probably so. So everybody knows iterations. How about we put those iterations instead of weeks or months into days, hours, minutes, and seconds? Can you have 1 second iteration? But that would be extreme, right? So all those things were tested during the extreme programming project and reported working quite well. Not extremely well, but working quite well. And the extreme programming has got its own principles out of it. And these principles are something everyone will agree to, probably, because they're just common sense. Like, for example, rapid feedback. You need to have rapid feedback to be able to do anything. Assume simplicity, right? How many times have you seen something being worked on for days just to find out that you can actually implement it in like an hour, for example, because it's much simpler and we don't have to prepare for the future. How about incremental change? Have you ever seen a big change on production at once? I have. They usually roll it back, okay? What you want to do, if you want to deliver anything, you want to have small changes, small set of constant changes, the whole flow. And in reality, that's much easier to achieve a big change with those small changes than to actually roll out one big change. Embracing change. Well, embracing change means that we are not going to choose technologies, techniques, vendors, whatever else, that will stop us from changing our minds in the future, okay? And there is a lot of technologies there that when you go in, you're never going back, okay? Oracle, for example. And the quality work. Now, this one is the most interesting principle for me, and in my opinion. Why? Because if we are talking about the quality, and if you're talking about the quality with the management, you usually see something like this. Well, you can have quality, and it's basically one variable if you want to put it into perspective with cost, scope, budget, whatever else. Or they can do something like that. Or sometimes they can do something more complex, or this, or that, right? But basically, from the management point of view, quality is something you can change. From the extreme programming point of view, the quality is actually only in two options, excellent or insanely excellent. And you cannot choose, all right? These are the only two possible options. Now, why is it important and why is it completely different than everything else, Scrum, Kanban, whatever else? Well, the important part is that extreme programming, as the name suggests, talks a lot about the code. The code is the most important thing in the software development. You can fire all the managers, all the Scrum Masters, all the specialists, all the service delivery managers, everyone. But you cannot fire the programmers, because if you don't have the code, you are not going to get the product. If you have the code and have nobody else, you may have the product. It's going to be hard, but it may happen, all right? So let me emphasize this once again. The code is the clue, right? And it's very easy for the management, especially for the management, to forget or to say, yeah, we have the code, and the code is the necessary evil. The small people earning a little money, they are working on the code, and we would like to get rid of that. Well, there actually was an idea that we can get rid of the code, and it didn't work. That you can draw pictures, and then will automatically, something happen, and you'll have software. That doesn't work. So, why doesn't everyone use extreme programming right now, if it's so good and it's so important and so on? Well, because it's very, very hard. Let's talk about, for example, pair programming. Now, extreme programming says you got to be doing pair programming 100% of the time. So I got this setup, for example. This is a picture from my work. This is 2 monitors, 1 laptop, two keyboards, 1 mouse. Actually, I should have another one, but usually it works well enough. And you know what? I know a few companies that started doing 100% pair programming. They even started with less computers than people, okay? Twice as many people as computers. And they all rolled back. Nobody works this way. Why? Well, the first problem of this is that when you're doing pair programming, you're doing 100% of your effort. You're pushing everything because you're working with another person. You're not slacking. You cannot just go and watch whatever you watch, the Motivatory, Facebook, whatever else, right? You don't have time for that. You work together. And after a day of pair programming, you are exhausted. You are happy. You did something good. You know it's good, but you are exhausted. After 5 days, you are exhausted even more, okay? So you got the weekend, and your girlfriend or your boyfriend wants to take you out somewhere, and you say, no, I'm exhausted. I'm just laying here. That's difficult, actually, to handle. So what happens in reality? In reality, you learn very fast that either you have to make several breaks during these sessions of pair programming, or, and people usually go this direction, you can find out that it pays out better if you do all the obvious things, the simple stuff, the things that you know how to implement yourself. And then somebody else just spends 5 minutes on reviewing that. And you will do the pair programming on all the difficult things, okay? All the hard stuff, because pair programming is better. It's just exhausting. So most of the companies that I know that started with 100% pair programming actually moved into the situation when it is allowed, it is encouraged to do pair programming, but it's not, you don't have to. Choose when you want to do pair programming, okay? And to have that, you need to have a special setup for this. This is the setup for pair programming. Why? Because you got minimum obstacles that you can have to start pair programming with somebody. Someone says, oh, you know what? Have a look at this. And you just turn over or move to the side. And you can do that. Now, but the problem is, I don't see this kind of a setup usually in companies. Usually they do like an aisle in the middle, or there's something completely different, right? So that's how it works. How about test-driven development? Who does test-driven development here? Or has got a test-driven development in the project? Lots of people, that's nice. So everybody knows test-driven development. However, when you look at the tests that we have, and you see that, okay, so we got unit test, integration, acceptance, and the manual test at the very top, right? The extreme version of that is that the test scenarios are written and maintained by the business, okay? We are going to behavior-driven development. We are saying these are test scenarios. The software should work like this, and business should tell us that. And what happens? Well, in practice, business is usually not interested. They usually want, yeah, we want something. Yeah, give us that, and we will we'll tell you what's wrong with it. Or maybe, how about when we work together and write all those tests together, and then they say, yeah, but you know what? We are not going to maintain, we are not going to keep those test scenarios. And in fact, I'm in a company where we were using Cucumber, because Cucumber actually allows you to put all the test scenarios in files that the business can edit, understand, and manage. But business never did that. And I'm talking about the company 1,000 strong. which means that we rolled back to actually using Spock for testing, because it's a much better library, and only we can understand those tests. Only we can read those tests. But business never did that anyways, okay? And also one more thing, that if you are looking at this test-driven development thing, and if you are really serious about it, and you want to go into extreme levels, sooner or later you will have to test on production. Why? Well, first of all, business already starts testing on production because they usually don't trust you enough. So they will have this person coming over there and just clicking through. Does the software work after the deployment, right? So you can automate this. Why does the person has got to create the user account, go through all the flow, and then delete the user account? I can automate that, but I will automate that on production because I want to know after the deployment, does it work? And this scares the shit out of managers, all right? Now, the idea about the whole team, the idea in extreme programming is that the best communication you may have is if you are in the same room. So if you got the developers there, and you got the business person there, that's the best communication you can have. Which means that you should have 100% of the time a business person sitting next to all my programmers, all right? All the guys sitting all together. And whenever we have like a question, or maybe not even a question, when we are talking about between ourselves, between programmers in a room, the business person should be able to hear it and just put his 3 cents inside, right? No, guys, you know what? You're actually thinking wrong. This should go another way, okay? Now, isn't that a beautiful thing? It is. During the last 10 years working in software houses, I was able to do this twice. The first time when I was able to do this was because the business was actually a guy who used to be a programmer, and he did understand everything about it, all right? The second time was when I was creating software for a startup company that was on the verge of actually running out of the money. And the project manager from the business side was very motivated. He also had no office yet, which means that he sat with us during the whole project and was able to answer our questions. And it really helps, it really works. But even though the business pays a lot of money for what we do, they cannot delegate one person who would be able to sit with us and work with us in practice, okay? Now, the same thing with continuous integration. Now, continuous integration is normal these days, but if you want to take it to the extreme, you would do actually continuous delivery. And then delivery and continuous integration is very close together. How about continuous deployment? Continuous deployment means if I push something into the repository, it will go to the production, whether I like it or not, okay? And to tell the truth, this is the perfect thing to solve if you have problems with actually deploying. But you have to explain to the business, you know, every day at 12 o'clock we are going to automatically deploy to production. Or maybe not at 12 o'clock, maybe we will automatically deploy after every push. And the business is just scared shitless. And usually does not allow you to do that. Now, the collective ownership. Now, a lot of people talk about collective ownership, and it is very popular. However, when you think about collective ownership, you have to understand no silos, which means that when you have these guys who are these Oracle guys, they spent 20 years on Oracle, okay? And they got all the certificates from Oracle. How are they supposed to actually understand anything in the Java world or Ruby world? That just doesn't happen. You cannot have those guys. So maybe you have to get rid of the Oracle, okay? Because it's automagic, and it's difficult, and it's hard, right? So you have to choose the technologies to actually not allow silos there. That's difficult because it influences everything. And the next thing is that actually the size of those projects. I got about 160 developers, all right? In 5 countries. Which means that I have a lot of code. I have a code for 12 more countries, right? And to be honest, I don't know a single person who would be able to read all this code. So how can we be responsible for all of this if we are that big? And originally, extreme programming does not give an explanation, does not give an answer to that. It's not possible, I'm sorry. Extreme programming is for small teams, right? Fortunately, that's not exactly true. Because you can do this, you just don't do big code bases. You just don't do big monolithic systems. Why? Because it doesn't pay off. It's actually very, very hard. And in 2014, distributed systems, we know enough about distributed systems to be able to handle distributed programming. It used to be very difficult, more difficult than actually having 160 programmers doing work on a single monolithic application, but that's not true anymore. You can go into microservices, for example. Okay, now the next thing is small releases. That's a very, very simple thing, right? You need to be able to release, and the best thing is if you go small steps and you release often. But actually releasing often means that either you have to stop production and tell your business, I'm sorry, you're not going to work for the next 5 minutes because I'm doing a release. Or you have to do something different. And this something different is also going distributed. Being able to stop just the part of the system for 5 minutes, do the release, or maybe less than 5 minutes actually. We started with the releases that were taking an hour. Right now, with microservices, we are able to do releases for 5 minutes. But it's hard because it's hard to explain to the business, sorry guys, you're not going to work for the next hour or for the next 5 minutes. And the sustainable piece is also difficult to explain and to introduce into your organizations, even if that makes perfect sense, because it requires 40 hours a week. And that doesn't happen that much, okay? Why it doesn't happen? Well, I don't know, but I hear that a lot from the business side. Can you just, guys, do like a crunch? Do just, double your efforts for the next month or something like that? And I say no. But they don't keep asking, so they do not understand that. And I expect that other organizations have got the same problems. So people perform best if they're arrested. But what's more interesting is you have to give them some slack time. Because if you want to do innovation, innovation happens only when you have enough time to innovate. And to be able to innovate, you have to have enough time to actually stop there and just think about, yeah, so I got 1 more hour, what should I do now? Let's solve kind of a problem that I have. All right? Now that's difficult to explain to the business side or to managers. I'm giving those guys enough time, whatever they want to do. This day, the Friday, is for them. Okay? Now, and then we are paying for this. Try to explain that. So, if nobody uses all of this, what's the value of extreme programming? Okay? The value is this. It's like mixed martial arts. And actually, every programmer, every developer there is similar to mixed martial arts master. Why? Because we, the developers, we don't really care about Scrum. We don't really care about Kanban, extreme programming, or whatever religion you have. We don't give a shit. To be honest, we care about the practices, about things that help us deliver and build stuff, all right? And when you realize this, and then you realize that you have to learn extreme programming, because only then will you have the information and the experience to actually solve these kind of problems when they arrive. Then you will understand how much benefit you can have benefit from that. I'll give you an example. We had the problem with actually deploying to production because we were working on a single code base for 12 different countries, and Poland was just one of those countries. And we were working on Poland. Right? And and we had the problem like it would take us a month to deploy, to merge everything all together, to test everything together, to fix all the problems, and then to push to production. And what we've decided to go, and you could decide that, okay, so this is important, let's plan for it, let's make like a process, once per 3 months we're going to release, and so on, there are going to be different phases and so on. We've decided to go in different direction. We decided to say, okay, so for some of those people, some of those extreme people, deploying every day to production works. What does it require? It requires to solve all the problems that we have to be able to do that. So we are going to implement it. It took us a month before we were finally there. But we are deploying to production every day, whether we like it or not. And we also kind of didn't inform the business about it. But finally, they accepted that we have to either do this or never deploy again, because we will have so many problems. So you will know those things when you train extreme programming, when you learn all those practices, one by one of extreme programming. You will be much richer for that, and you will be able to solve problems. And also, you will gain the values of extreme programming, because the practices is like a karate. You practice something, but there is an idea behind it. You have to understand this and the value of it. And at some point, you stop thinking about the practices. You start thinking about the values. You can modify all the techniques because you are already so much experienced with this. And the values of extreme programming are these. The communication, because every single problem with a project that can happen is usually traced back to communication with somebody not telling somebody something, right? The simplicity, because when you have things that are very, very simple, it helps in communicating stuff. Business can understand it. And the second thing is that when you have code so simple, it is really, really easy to reason about, which means less bugs, which means easier to fix it, which means easier to change it, easier to deliver it, and to work on it, basically. So simplicity is the major value in here, okay? And compare that to the abstract problem factory, because I feel like writing abstract problem factory and solving all the problems altogether. Forget about it. Choose the simplest possible solution and stick with it. And feedback. And feedback is not only about having the feedback, but actually asking the system about the feedback. All this information should be in the system themselves. Why are you me asking what the system does? You should have a test for that, okay? You think about those values and you start thinking in a different way. You stop thinking about solving problems just by following a technique, but you finally are in the situation when you can solve those problems creatively because you know what you want to gain, what you value, what you want to achieve, right? Now, courage is another thing, for example. And courage is very important because when you are afraid, you will not innovate, but also you will work less efficiently, okay? So when you think about this, you have to understand, and from that the courage is very important, and thus we are doing test-driven development, for example. But it also means that it should be okay to fail for people. You have to build safety nets. It should be okay for people to fail, and then they'll be free to actually try different things and to push your business to the front, right? And the last thing is the respect, because you know, I used to work with a lot of different people, and some of them would do very bad things to the code and just shit on other people, basically. They would push breaking code into production, into the breaking tests, not write tests, just don't care about other people. And I don't want to work with those people anymore. And you can build, and actually I am building right now, I'm the head of software development here, I'm hiring people. And I choose the people that will care, okay? People that give a shit, people that actually have respect for themselves and for other people. This is very, very important, because when you have those people and when you work like that, finally, you are happy, okay? And you know what? Having happy developers, not because just, we had a day off or we earn a lot of money, but because of our work, is actually the best way to have the best developers and to have the best software, even if your business actually after 3 years will go back to COBOL, for example. Thank you.